What is that I hear? Is it the clarion call of Trek Talk Tuesdays? That's right. What's up, my know-it-alls? Welcome to Trek Talk Tuesdays. Specifically, we're going to be talking about last week's episode, The Ghosts of Illyria, and we're going to kind of break down a little bit more about the episode, get into some of those things, talked about some of your discussion topics you guys brought up in the comment sections, and hopefully just kind of have a lot more fun with this thing and sort of talk a little bit more into Star Trek as we can. So, all right, here we go. Let's talk Trek Talk Tuesdays. What's up, my know-it-alls? Welcome back. So the thing that I want to point out is I am wearing version 2.0 of the uniforms that I'm putting together. Yes, I am still lining up some of this stuff with my printer. I was more trying it on for the quality, which is a nice little zip deal. Obviously, the rank badges, rank pins, and the comm badge stuff, that all comes separately through your various vendors. Because the idea is I just want to make big and tall sci-fi uniform. So anyway, but yeah, so again, as I get these ready and as I finally pin down the design that I'm coming up with, because I'm doing all this myself, I will definitely make them available. The idea is to make some uniform stuff. I'll make them available for other folks too, but at the end of the day, I'm a big guy. I'm a big and tall guy. I'm 6'7", weigh about 350 pounds. At the end of the day, it's hard to find stuff in my sizes when it comes to cosplaying, so I'm doing my best to put together some things for us big guys. That's the end of my sales pitch, I promise. Moving forward, last week's episode, The Ghosts of Illyria. Okay, so the episode starts, we get our very first official canon origin backstory for number one, and actually the truth is that isn't 100% the truth. There was actually a book that back in the day, back when Star Trek novels were considered canon or not, and it was a book. It gave a background for her, and I even think there was the name Una was used there. And unless I'm wrong, and I can't remember the name of the book, I just remember reading something similar about that story a while back. But anyway, whatever. Either way, she picks her name because the Illyrian name is actually unpronounceable. Anyway, some other folks have made sort of some inferences that the Illyrians we saw in Enterprise versus the Illyrians we saw now are different species, or that there may be some confusion. We'll deal with that later, because if there's one thing us Star Trek fans know how to do, we can rationalize plot and consistency. Let's go. So, and that's a trick we've been doing for years, by the way. That's not a new Trek, old Trek thing. That's literally a fandom thing, because we've been doing that for a long, long time. So, you get into the episodes, and I'm not reviewing. Want to read my review or listen to my review? By all means, check out the card right up here somewhere. And so, actually, I think it's gonna be up here. So you get into this thing, and I dug. There's a lot of things I dug. One of the things I dug were the jackets, because if you remember the cage, they wore gray away team jackets, which were to cover their uniform top, like any normal person would do if you're going to a place that's whatever. And so I think it's a little homage or callback to that. I thought it was really cool from a production design standpoint. I dug it. I definitely dug that. Do have something from one of our messages online, our comments online, was from Matthew Strathmore, who says the Illyrians went wanted into the Federation, eh? Well, that's cool. Guess they, spoilers for Enterprise, didn't hold a grudge against humanity after all. Or maybe that craft never survived the expanse long enough to tell the rest of their people what humanity did to them. Nope. Yeah. So, true, but I lean more toward the fact that I think this was a different Illyrian. It sounds like the Illyrians were more of a one of those species that goes throughout and sort of becomes and looks different and does things and stretches out. And I think that they weren't as homespun, meaning they weren't the exact same species that just colonized. I think when the colony went out, that became Illyrians for there. And same thing with those and the others. And so I think that that particular group of Illyrians that they met in Enterprise hadn't fully formed what they were yet. And so, you know, I think that that's I'm willing to go there. I'm willing to rationalize away that thought. So yeah, there we go. There was an awful lot of there's been lately an awful lot of talk regarding how the characters the characters are very self-assured. It's one thing to understand that you'd have to essentially, we've always joked you'd have to be a rocket scientist to actually have been in Starfleet, and how like their academy, like their school, would need to have ridiculous amounts of everything, just the most advanced science stuff you could possibly imagine. And so, but there's a lot of like, you know, I'm a genius and blah blah blah, and it's one thing to be that, it's another thing to not. I don't know. I feel like it feels a little bit on the nose to sit here and have everybody just kind of look. We get you're all the best at what you do at certain things. I get it, and I've never doubted that. So I don't know that you have to keep reminding me. Just saying, just a thought, something to think about. Can we talk about how sexy engineering looks in this whole episode? Oh yeah, every time that they're looking down the tunnel, I'm just like, oh. This is beautiful. Not only does it's brilliant, but it also reminds me of every title sequence of Iron Man movie ever. Because you have the big circle is just glowing at the end of the thing. Again, as a former chief engineer, beautiful, chef's kiss at how gorgeous engineering looks right now. But yeah, another observation that was made, and I found myself asking the same question later, was, okay, so we have transporter problems. Fine. Totally down. I dig it. Why didn't anybody think about a shuttlecraft? I mean, you should have, if I'm not mistaken, they should have several, if not more, I think almost like a dozen or so on the ship somewhere, some way, shape, or form. Like it isn't a rarity. Like they didn't have one. It wasn't like one ship, one shuttlecraft. Like I think there's like 4 or 5 of them. It's not a lot, but there's not a ton. But at the end of the day, that I feel like they could have taken that down. Now, I will argue back. Could like to play both sides of this discussion. If you take a shuttle, you deal with several other issues, other factors. And in fact, there is the one, I remember the episode Galileo 7 from the original series. Galileo 7 is a prime example of dealing with ion storms or ionic type storm fronts. I had to explain to my wife what an ion storm was, and I'm like, it's totally a fictitious thing in the sci-fi, whatever. But no, the truth is, I went in great depth and detail as to what makes an ion storm in Star Trek. Because that's what geeks do. Because Star Trek and sci-fi. Anyway, and so you get this really fun look at the idea of, well, why didn't... I don't know. I feel like you could have explained a little better away to us. It's the sign of lazy writing, and I don't mean lazy writing as in like they didn't want to write it. I think it's lazy writing in that they're not thinking about those kind of things, and that's the kind of stuff where you need someone to be your story keeper, the person who understands how all this stuff's supposed to work and whatnot, not only from a writing standpoint, but from a sci-fi standpoint. Because the one thing that always made Star Trek on that level like this, Gene Roddenberry always wanted to make sure the science was viable. It may not have been possible today, and it may not have been, but if in a perfect world, theoretically, all this adds up. Phasers, force fields, deflectors, warp drive, how the warp drive functions, all those things, transporter technology, shuttlecrafts, all of it, it serves could be real, potentially. And I feel like sometimes we lose a little bit of that when you're not careful. Anyway, all right, so then we get this really great moment where, number one, remember when she stood on, when she got back up to the ship and she gets on the bridge, and I call it her, she had to tell everybody the bad news in the is what I said in the original in the review. But the other thing I noticed is that she like takes charge in a way that is very Starfleet. Nobody asks questions. Nobody's like, well, you're not Captain Pike, or you're a woman, or you're this or that. It's just like, okay, the order's been given, let's go. And I thought it was pretty. I was impressed by that, to say the least. one of the commenters in the comments for this episode that my review was, this director's overemphasizing this moment as something more grand than it should be. I'm going to go out on a limb here and suggest this director's probably never worked on Star Trek before, and I will agree with you. I think there's every possibility that you get a lot of same thing with these writers. I feel like the writers know from a perfunctories level like what Star Trek is, but they don't know what Star Trek is. So I think you'd get like, oh, somebody who goes, I don't know, you need a blah blah blah, and they'd use isolinear chip the wrong way because we know what that means. So they're like, oh, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, so something to keep in mind. Where am I at? Oh, okay. Somebody commented and pointed out that when number one has the conversation with Pike, what console is Pike using? And when we cut to Pike, he's holding his communicator. Now, I will say this. The actor should not have looked at anything, but he could very well be looking at his communicator. But the angle is wrong if he's looking at his communicator. The second thing I will say is, if you remember back into the original TOS movie, the movie 4, the Return Voyage Home, and they're in the Klingon warbird, the bird of prey, and they're flying, and she gives him the coordinates, and he says, bring that up on screen. Having the technology that can essentially take data from point A and generate an image, a viable image, so thus having to go around the idea of zooming and lenses and line of sight and all that stuff is very doable. And it's actually very plausible, in fact. And so it's one of those things that it's not a new science, but I feel like if you're trying to say, okay, the ship has the ability to do this, triangulate where an image should be based on certain data that's given, and then boof, generate an image. Okay, I'm totally down. If we can deep fake today, imagine in the far-flung future how much extrapolation you can make from just data. Like, you wouldn't even actually need, technically, and I've said this before, there shouldn't be windows on a starship. What they would be are basically glorified displays showing you outside, because you don't need. A window is a concept that's unnecessary when you think about the technology that you have available to you. Anyway, so again, something I thought was interesting is that Pike isn't so much at a console, but I can understand where, as much as I believe his picture is coming from the communicator. The communicator is using a much smaller, more base version of the monitor technology. So from a communicator, you can extrapolate a 3D view of the entire area based on the information that it's pulling in. Welcome to Rationalization 101. Anyway, so then you get this moment where number one is sort of kind of researching and giving instructions to sing like a first officer. This is another comment from Mike. Michael Strathmore made a lot of really good comments and a lot of good beats. So definitely, sir, you win the Mr. Know-It-All prize as far as I'm concerned in terms of knowing something. In fact, matter of fact, you know what? I'm gonna jump right to that. So we're gonna do a little something called let's get a discussion beat. Let's just talk something through. And this comment comes, and I'm gonna show it directly on screen from Matthew Strathmore, who says, La'an Noonien Singh is related to Khan, ? Whoa, boy, is that going to irritate a lot of Star Trek fans. Oof, why would they do this? ? This smells like Akiva Goldsman nonsense. Yeah, I totally agree. Seems utterly inconceivable that the Enterprise came upon a Sung before you know, coming upon a Sung. Wow. Khan Noonien Singh, sorry. Wow, they really did make this character related to Khan, didn't they? Like, for what purpose other than to feed into nostalgic member berries? Okay, let's take a closer look at that. I feel like this discussion beat, so thank you, Michael, for that, or Matthew, rather, for that. I think it's important. I think it's important to look at. I think that I haven't talked much about a lot of the casting choices that happened early on, mainly because at the time when the casting choices were going on and I saw the names of the characters and whatnot, other people wanted to blow up about those things. My feeling has always been I wanted to give the show a shot on its own, and we're still there. We're still at that place. So they have not made La'an's heritage a major issue. Now it's been voiced and talked about twice. Here's the one thing I will say. Abbreviated storytelling like this shorter storytelling. Serves the purpose of giving you meaning shorter storyline. So you get an episode, a season rather with 10 episodes or 12 episodes or 14 episodes or whatever, instead of the old complimentary 22, 24, 26, whatever. All right. Now you get a season like this. The purpose of these smaller non-protracted seasons, or a tighter season, is to tell a tight start, middle, and beginning and end story. It's to tell serialized storytelling, okay, not episodic storytelling. Now, would it serve their purpose in the future to have longer protracted storytelling? Absolutely. Why am I bringing all this up when the question's about La'an and why did they do that thing? It makes it more difficult to process information when you're doing a tighter run. So that means if it was the Next Generation or the original series or Deep Space Nine or any of those, you'd have got 20 some odd episodes for us to digest and chew on before finally at the end of the season coming to some form of a conclusion on, hey, maybe that's when the augment decides to stay and everyone's like, it's okay, you've earned your place and this and that. And you had all this time to deal with those things amidst your episodic storytelling. Now, we don't get that here with this. With this, you're stuck with however many episodes we're getting, okay? And at the end of the day, those tighter episodes, those 10 episodes, 12 episodes, whatever, that means you have to you have to concentrate a whole lot of storytelling into smaller bites. And that's sort of where we started this all at. Now we come back to the question, why would they do this? Well, Matthew, let's discuss. I do feel like it's a Kiva Goldsman piece. I think that's a thought. Anything that subverts what a lot of the popular opinion is, sometimes the showrunners and whatnot want to go in that direction, and that is a creative decision. I make no judgments on that because I'm a fan and a consumer of this content. Ergo, I meet it where it's at. If I don't like something, I say I don't like it. If I love something, I say I love it. But I don't necessarily find reasons to hate things. I will sometimes say things feel a little abrupt, a little stiff. So for me, this is one of them. It seems like every character currently is beginning to be defined by stuff. Now, I don't necessarily know if that's always got to be trauma. It just seems like it's working out that way right now, and it's okay. I'm down. I'm fine with that. So you're dealing with La'an, who's going to have a lot of different things she has to deal with. Is this the best use of this character's time? And I think Matthew brings up a really good point. Is it plausible, or does it make Star Trek feel small? And by small, I don't mean like in stature, but I mean, does the universe feel a little smaller? If everything's that interconnected and tightly woven and, wound together, mind you, it's not as small as it'd be if there was an Archer on the crew or a Picard on the crew, who isn't anywhere near being the characters we know, and it's either a great-great-grandson or the future great-great-grandfather. I mean, obviously, Jean-Luc's the first one to leave, you know what I'm saying, but I'm using an example, so it could be anybody, maybe it's an earlier Riker. And it's like, you sit here and you go, does it have to be that small? So similarly, I sit here and I say, did we have to bring these two beats together? Because it begs the question, then how much did she not know or not know about her? If she knows so much about her parents, about her ancestors' history, so much that she was called augment by children, then you would know the last end result, which was that they were tried and eventually sent off planet, I would think. Enough to warn somebody and say, hey, by the way, there may be a ship or something out there floating in space, a derelict, if you will, you know what I'm saying, or a space seed out in the midst of the space, whatever. My point is, you have to be sure and careful that the thoughts and decisions you're making aren't just, like you said, member berries, because it's not even the right kind of member berries. And like I talked about last week, because we were actually talking about Into Darkness last time, Star Trek Into Darkness, the J.J. Abrams movie that had Benedict Cumberbatch reprise the role or play the role of Khan. Spoilers if you haven't seen that movie yet, whatever. And so I find myself saying, well, what's the why? Because there's got to be a point to all this. Now, we've been heading toward this next, and we're going to get into that next episode in a minute, but we've been heading toward this next episode for a minute. I even said, I predicted before the season's out, we're going to get the Gorn. We're going to face the Gorn, and I even figured it was probably the ship that it ends up being in the trailer. So, I'm very much of the mindset that there has to be more if you're going to go in that direction, and, we'll see. We'll see, but I'm willing to, I want to know where they're going to go with it, and I hope it lands. I hope it lands. Even if it doesn't, I'm still going to enjoy the show, whatever. But I hope it lands, and hopefully you do too. Comment below. Let me know what you think about that whole idea of, you know, La'an. Should they have done it? Should they have not done it? Don't just be angry. Tell me reasons, okay? You know, if you don't, there's a thing you don't like about it, fine. Then let me know. But like, let's discuss it like rational people. So yeah, let me know. I'd love to know your ideas and thoughts about that particular thing. So then you go into one of my other favorite thoughts. Everybody, like, I had 3 or 4 comments about this very thing, and I also noticed it too, was how dope is Hemmer? Like, they're like, level 5 lockdown, all this goes down, and Hemmer's just like, boom, and you're just like, okay, clearly we're doing stuff, and everyone just jumps and starts going, and I'm like, brother's got himself a tight ship. Let's go. But yeah, so all right, so we're gonna look. I love seeing Hemmer as a character. I wish we'd get more than just his kind of brash geniusness, but yeah, and hopefully we'll get a little more episodes of those. Was anybody else confused? My wife was. Mrs. Know-It-All was definitely confused about the whole Hemmer emergency transporter Mbenga thing that happened. Mainly because she couldn't figure out, why is Mbenga being creepy? Why do you have to turn the lights back on? And I had to explain to her, okay, from what I'm getting, and the episode says this without saying it, there's a thing going on. It's Mbenga's daughter in the transporter, obviously. So when the chief engineer shows up, he's going to be investigating the thing, and I'm guessing Mbenga turns the light off so that it can cause the people out there to be uncomfortable. Okay, problem number 1. Medical professional, what are you doing? Causing trouble. Cause thee no harm. What the hell? That's rough. I'm not okay with that. Anyway, then you have the idea that somehow Hemmer is dumb. For a guy who just seconds ago told us on screen, or minutes ago, that he was a genius, he's not very genius-like, and he's not geniusing enough for me right now. So I'm sitting here going, what's going on here? Come on, guy. And then Mbenga suddenly turned the light back. He turned the light back on because it was him. He's the one who turned it off to begin with. That's why. So that's the whole point of that exchange, just in case there was that much confusion about it. But yeah, man, overall, I liked the episode. I mean, the episode wasn't bad. I think there was, I gave it an 8 out of 10 on the Know-It-All Index during my review. And so, yeah. So now, all right, so now we're going to take a look at the trailer. Let's take a look at the trailer for episode 4. Coming up, Strange New Worlds, Memento Mori.
There are supposed to be hundreds of people here.
Looks like the bodies were all dragged here.
The monsters are coming!
What monsters?
It makes noises like this.
It's the Gorn.
It's the Gorn!
The Enterprise is going to make it.
We've got this.
Now you almost make it sound fun.
We're too damaged to stand and fight. Time to run, sir.
Helm, take us down.
To a giant gas cloud of death. Why not?
Oh, it's so nice. That is amazing. Okay. A lot of fun stuff happening. The very first thing that I think came to mind for me was as it's transporting it, and you sort of see you see everybody kind of walking on and whatnot, or walking in and whatnot. I'm really impressed by how easily they're able to really make us feel that level of stress, because it's, what I mean by that is, I love the fact that episodes are leaning into certain aspects. So if it's scary, here's some horror aspects. If it's, if it's light, here's some other lighter whatever elements and whatnot. If it's action, here's action stuff. And I think that's important. I feel like when you tell a story, not every story needs to feel the same. Okay? And I'm down for that. And I think that if something is scary, let it be scary. Play it that way. And they're doing that. They're leaning into that. And right now, the fact is, I know the fact we're getting the Gorn. I'm excited. So that's one of the first things I had said a while back. When we first saw the original season breakdown, when I was like, all right, let's take a look at the season, let's see what everything's going on. I remember thinking to myself, one of these ships that we're seeing is going to be the Gorn. And it was the Shepherd ship, and it was this ship, which is actually the Gorn. And so because you could easily tell that they were both being super aggressive at the time. I was actually more convinced that the Shepherd ship we saw 2 episodes ago was going to end up being the Gorn ship. So when I saw it was the Shepherd ship and this and that, then to me it solidified and cemented that this was the Gorn ship. And so, you know, and it's so interesting seeing, so there's some sort of refugees. They've obviously helped, whether it's a colony ship or something, and you see La'an, who's trying to help one of the kids who's dealing with this whole thing, and then she describes it. And remember, La'an knows. La'an is not stupid. La'an has dealt with a lot and she has seen a lot. And therefore, for when the girl starts describing it, I guarantee you La'an's like, oh man. So remember, the Gorn are vicious, predatory creatures. Okay? We had that thing where they talked about a lone survivor for the Gorn. When the Gorn let a lone survivor go, sometimes they do that to draw in others. So same thing with this kind of thing. I think that when they let someone escape, that could be a hunting tactic to get someone back to come back in and be like, oh, let's go help them, this and that, and then boom, they pounce and they grab, and next thing you know, they're replenishing their numbers, and it's pretty brutal. So I don't know that we're going to actually get to see them because of quote-unquote canon. I also don't know that we won't, so we'll see. I'm excited to see what happens. I would love to actually see them. I wasn't a big fan of the redo they tried back on Enterprise when they tried to show kind of an earlier version of a Gorn, and they tried whatever. It was a little too CGI. Don't get me wrong, I think a happy marriage of the original series, and basically give us what you've done with the Enterprise. Take the production design from the original series and make it with today's aesthetic. That Gorn would look awesome. It would look vicious. It would look like it harkens back to that original. You know, what you're facing right now with Strange New Worlds is what a lot of people had to face when you dealt with Doctor Who. When Doctor Who was rebooted in 2005, it was part of its charm was this papier-mâché monster of the week idea. So I think the fact that they're taking the charm of the production design of the past and doing it with today's aesthetic, or in today's font or language, if you will, that's a smart move. Just do that. I trust you guys. You've got my you're doing amazing work in terms of keeping Star Trek alive, and I'm here for it. So, you know, I'm very much excited. I like this episode. The episode coming. I'm ready. Look, we're gonna get the Gorn. Gorn. That's right. So much Gorn, it's ridiculous. All right, so yeah, comment below. Let me know what you think of the Gorn, seeing the old ones. Let me know what you thought of the old Enterprise version from back in the day. But man, I tell you what, I really love touching base with you guys for Trek Talk Tuesdays. My wife and I are still working on the details for how to make Trek Talk Tuesdays become maybe a Q&A, or possibly doing a Q&A on Fridays or something. Being able to kind of do some more stuff in that time frame. But as it stands right now, man, I will see you on Thursday. I cannot wait. And yes, I promise, right after I'm done with this, I'm going to hit record on doing my Discovery Season 2 review. So that's also going to come later this week in your feed. All right, guys, I'll talk to you later. Like, subscribe, click the little bell icon to be notified when new content drops. Never forget, everyone loves a know-it-all. See you Thursday.